to see an alternative transportation corridor, and I really appreciate your thinking bigger um, and not just limiting yourself to a bike path.
Mhm.
Highway expansion is kind of a self-fulfilling negative prophecy. So the more alternatives first we have, the better our community will be. Um, what is the funding amount of the grant? I didn't see that in
Oh,
the
yeah,
presentation.
I'd said that kind of at the end, $350,000 for the to
Oh,
hire
I'm
the
sorry.
consultant. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, right, for the consultant. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And
So
then,
that's the whole grant. Okay.
yeah. And then once we determine what the best
What
path is,
is
we'll be
the
able to assess the trail and how difficult it will be to build, based on the terrain, and then come up with estimates out of this feasibility study as well to help figure out how much it's going to cost, and then we can start looking for the funds.
okay. Two more questions. How
Okay.
does this relate to, I know the city of Reno was doing a riverfront process. I think it was last year or earlier this year.
Right. Yeah, that was the Truckee River plan that they put together, and we were heavily involved as a kind of a strategic partner, since a lot of that has to do with the trail that runs through the cities. It's completely separate from that. Yeah,
But
that was put together to find a way to spend some ARPA funding by the allocated by the end of the year for the city of Reno. And I think they've probably got they've got way more projects than they could fund at this point in time, but they're looking at doing some safety improvements and things along the trail.
okay, yeah, I was wondering if you were involved in that and if there was a nexus between that work and your work.
Yeah, no, I've been involved with it, but there's no nexus between that work and this work. This is as was mentioned earlier, outside of the cities. It's moving into Story County. Yeah.
Hmm. Right. Okay. Sorry, I was also thinking about the transportation alternatives, the alternative path that you were describing. I
Oh,
don't know.
yeah, that's yet to be determined. I mean, that alternative path may end up also being a paved multimodal path. At this point in time, we're still working on finding the best route. We've got some utility easements that are a possibility. We've been working with Washoe County to find some easement access and things. So that's slowly coming together. But at this time, that alternative path is looking to be like a dirt path. However, that could change because it would actually help to open up the multimodal means of transportation through the whole corridor if we did move to a paved path through there, which would serve our community.
Great. Okay, and then the final question or comment is like Anne, I do really encourage you to pursue public-private partnerships or nonprofit-private partnerships to whatever degree you can. Also, I was wondering if you have any plans to consider how transit connections might integrate to the new section or even any of the alternative routes.
Well, I guess that's this having this meeting is the first step towards that. Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that was looked at in the study as well, trying to make those connections to the river, which doubles to the path, right, and gets people to the other modes of transportation. So that's definitely something we would like to talk about. So I think this is a good first delve into that conversation. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, really, really encourage you to see how you can integrate transit because, a lot of people don't bike long distances and
Yeah.
we I know that in this group we talk often about how nice it would be to get away from car dependency and
Mhm.
part of car dependency is feeling like the bike ride is too long or the scooter ride is too long or whatever it is. So yeah, thank you. Thank you in advance for exploring those connections.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
We also had a comment in the chat. Michael, do you want to read your comment in the chat or do you want one of us to read it out loud? Just so everybody can hear.
Well, yeah, I can read it. Kind of wanted to get it out there before I forgot, but when Pana mentioned that freeway expansions tend to be somewhat negative, self-fulfilling prophecies. As soon as you build them, they fill up. Was throwing out there that the phenomenon of induced demand can work either way, either for the freeway or for the alternative, depending on what all you build. The if you build it, they will come applies to more than just the freeway.
Oh, sure. Yes. Do you have a question in there for me, or?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to emphasize Pana's point.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've been talking closely with a couple of Panasonic employees who ride the My Ride to Work bus out to Panasonic, and they take their bicycles with them, and then they ride home. Even though the path isn't completed, there's several people that are already making that happen. So yeah, you're probably right. It's definitely going to create a higher demand for that resource once it's done.
I can.
Damien?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, I have my mic working this time. Thank you. Sorry for being late. First of all, I had a medical appointment earlier, and then when I got home, I completely forgot. Oh yeah, there's a meeting, and I wasn't going to be here, but now I'm here. I didn't catch any of the presentation, but I'm wondering, and I don't expect someone to go through the entire presentation again. I'll probably listen to the recording later. But is there a slide that shows a map that I could just like quickly look at real quick, just to kind of visualize it? If you could backtrack to that.
That's like slide. There's
And Damien,
slide number 4 shows the.
Damien, the presentation was emailed out earlier today.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll check that out. Great. So this is all going to be outside of the current city boundaries. Got it. Okay. And it's going to go to Wadsworth and then neat. Yeah. So it's basically going to close the gap that's been needing to be closed for like the last 20 years.
Yeah. Well, the trail's been around for 21. So yeah. All the low hanging fruit is gone.
Right.
Now we're working on the harder sections. And I'm happy to, I can put my contact information in the chat. If anybody wants that, you can reach out to me individually as well.
Oh yeah. But I've actually been trying to get a hold ever since the previous president passed away a couple of years ago. I've been trying to get a hold of whoever's in charge now, because I don't know if you're familiar with the plan I've been trying to draw out for the last couple of years to make a bikeway plan for the entire region. But I've had a multitude of ideas and a multitude of questions as I learn. Yeah.
So it sounds like he's going to leave his information. Do you ever, and then we had somebody in the group wanting to, wait, in the chat. There it is. I
was going to ask something real quick.
Can you ask your question though, so that the presenter can respond, and then we can get to somebody else's question or comment?
Yes. Well, the question I was going to ask, I forgot now. I know that you were talking earlier about the river study. It's not finished yet. The Dig Studio was going to make the presentation at the last city council, but they couldn't do it because of a very filled agenda. Has the Tall Pyramid Trail Group been in touch with, and I know it's a little bit out of the scope of this area here, the Historic River Inn area? Because I know that during the 90s, it was part of the plan to extend the western portion of the trail south of the river and connect it up to, I forgot what street it was, but the property owners for the River Inn are extremely interested in having the trail go through their area, the property owner. And 30 years ago, there was an issue with ownership of that land. And has anyone from the trail group talked to them about that opportunity?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I spoke with somebody at the last public meeting for the Dig Studios held down at City Hall.
Oh yeah, I was there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I recognize you.
Hello.
I spoke with somebody a couple different times, and I know that they're speaking with the county too, because the county's got a big park proposal and a expansion of their their park system over in that area as well. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
definitely part of the conversation with the River Inn and the county. Yeah.
And the thing I was going to ask is there any interest in bringing back the MUTCD standard signage that has been, I've noticed for the last 10 years, has been systematically taken out of the downtown Reno area, which used to designate it as Bike Route 2. And around 2016, there was some kind of resolution that happened with the city council in conjunction with the Tahoe Pyramid Trail group to start replacing them with blue recreational path signage, which kind of reduced it down from an actual bike path to a trail. And I was really interested in finding out more about what was the decision-making plan behind that, because trail generally tells people that this is it's for nature and recreation only, and it sometimes is paved, sometimes it's not, versus the Federal Highway Administration recommendations, which is to be careful and make sure not to blur the two together when calling something a trail, to also present it as a municipal, what now people call micromobility path. In other words, something that's actually used for day-to-day commuting and just everyday life, getting to and from the store, that kind of thing. And I've always had this worry that people are just looking at this trail as like, oh, it's just a trail. But in fact, it's actually our bike freeway for the city that gets from one side of the city to the other. And I was just wondering, are those signs ever going to be reproduced and put back on the city portions of the trail, or what's the plan for that?
Well, a lot of the signs are still there. We actually just completed a sign survey through the whole area about 2-3 weeks ago. Just primarily, we were looking at the condition of the signs and then the signs that are missing. They were all located on GIS mapping.
Yeah.
For us to keep track of them and to keep track of their condition. So that's an interesting point. I mean, yeah, it's more than just a trail, especially through the city. It's more of a multimodal path. And it is actually a trail though in other sections.
Yeah.
So that's a good point, and that's something we can definitely talk about. I can speak with the board about, and you're talking about history that I don't have right now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because that definitely predates my understanding of what's going on here.
Yeah.
So that's something I definitely look into, because I know we're looking at replacing a lot of those signs, and it might be a good idea we still want to integrate somehow where we can have our name on there, the Tahoe Pyramid Trail. But I do understand what you're saying, that calling it what it is as a multimodal path might actually be better.
And there have been instances where I have had pedestrians tell me to get my bike off of the sidewalk, and I had to stop and explain to them that this is a 50-year-old bike path that was made for the city. So it's like, it's frustrating. So yeah. Thank you.
Point taken. Yeah. Thanks.
Kathy, did you want to read your question, or Ryan or I would be happy to read it out loud?
I can read it.
Great, thank you.
I have a question as to whether this trail will have any relationship to the proposed toll station. They were talking about a toll station between here and Fernley.
I don't have any. I have no background on that at all. Is that an interstate thing on the
yes.
I-80? Oh yeah, no, this wouldn't have anything to do with that.
Okay.
And NDOT is actually currently planning on widening the road to 3 lanes each way between USA Parkway and Reno Sparks. Maybe you didn't know that, but they are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you want to go?
Sure. Thank you so much, Mark, for the presentation. And of course, thank you for, like you said, all the low-hanging fruit is gone. So you're doing the hard work now. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I actually was one of the rare people that you described. I worked at Panasonic and I rode my bike to the shuttle stop and then took the shuttle to work and back. And I took my bike on the shuttle. So I will say that it's just my personal opinion. I don't have any data to back this up. I doubt many people will use the multimodal path on bicycles for commuting, just because for most people, it's going to be about like a 25-mile each way trip to work. So I also know this is difficult because the area around like the Nugget is very congested, but that's where the shuttle stop is for Panasonic and Tesla. And connecting from the Nugget on bicycle back to the TRT or the TPT is a little bit difficult. So if at all possible, especially if you're talking with Tesla and Panasonic and perhaps getting resources from them, just looking into ways that you can integrate both the TPT and their existing shuttle system, to give people a nice, safe, low carbon way to get to work.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I do know that there's a My Ride to Work shuttle pickup at Shadow Mountain, which is just down the road from me. And that's a little easier ride, but
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And one of the interesting things you made me think about the fact that, we get the path to Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, but the roadways out there are not super bike friendly at all. There are no bike lanes. So that's something that's another piece to this puzzle that would have to be improved in order for that to happen. So there'd have to be some roadway changes out there in order to make it safer for employees to utilize the trail that way.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's still great work, and once the artery is there, a lot of that, ancillary infrastructure should be easier to justify. So yeah. I appreciate the work. Thank you.
And I think I'm one of the rare people that a 20 or 25 mile ride each way to work wasn't that big a deal. I commuted along the trail to the airport authority for many years, and then over to the Plymouth Tennis Center when I was working for Keep Trucking. It was beautiful every day. So
yeah, well, I'm sure some crazy people will do it. I probably would have done it.
Yeah.
It existed. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Su Ting. Do you have regular meetings where if people wanted to find out more or connect on a more regular basis that people could do that with your group?
Well, we have board meetings every other month. Those haven't been open to the public, but they certainly can be. One of the best ways to get to stay connected with us is to go to our website and just sign up for our newsletter. That is a once a month newsletter. Talks about all the volunteer opportunities and then the upcoming events and things. We do once a year, we do an annual meeting, for the public to come and find out what's going on. Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to be there for meetings. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, so for everybody, the website is TahoePyramidTrail.org.
Yes.
Is there anybody that we missed? I'm checking the reactions and I'm checking the chat, and I don't see any comments that we haven't gotten to. Thank you so much. This is really fun to look at.
Yeah, thanks. Great conversation. Thanks for all your questions and your comments.
Okay. The next thing on our agenda is a second presentation. This is a presentation on the proposed amendment number 4 to the FFY 2023 to 27 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise more shortly known as RTIP.
Okay, this is Marquise again. Can everyone see the presentation clearly?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so this is just a quick presentation on the proposed number 4 amendment to the 2023-2027 RTIP, our Regional Transportation Improvement Program. There we go. So before I get into the details of each project that we're changing here, I'd like to provide a quick overview of the purpose of the RTIP and the process involved in carrying it out. So this is a federally required program of projects. Inclusion in the RTIP is one of the necessary steps in making a project eligible for federal funding. The document represents a prioritized program of scheduled and fiscally constrained transportation improvement projects designed to achieve the region's goals and objectives described in our long-range plan, which we call the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, by advancing the prioritized projects. The RTIP is not a reconciliation document that is amended retroactively to reflect actual expenditures. However, as projects evolve, significant changes in cost, timing, scope, and the like must be reflected in the RTIP. The program includes all federally funded or regionally significant transportation projects, regardless of funding source, and it's carried out by any agency within the MPO boundary. This is why sometimes, like today, you'll see an NDOT, or you'll see NDOT listed as the project lead, or why projects are added, deleted, and amended at the request of another agency, like I said here with this NDOT project. So this graphic summarizes the process of moving projects from the long-range vision through implementation. So on the left, we have our RTP, which has a 20-year minimum outlook. Then we get to this step, the 5-year outlook. Then we add this to our streets and highways interlocal cooperative agreements. And that's a shorter term 2-year outlook. And finally into an annual capital and operating budget for implementation. So this current version of the RTIP is the FFY, Federal Fiscal Year 2023 RTIP, which was adopted in August of 2023. It has been amended 3 times to date, once in November of 2023, January of 24, and June of 24. This proposed amendment represents the 4th amendment to this adopted RTIP. An amendment is required in this case to facilitate NDOT's statewide transportation improvement program, or the STIP, adoption, and to add, complete, and update projects. So for the next 2 slides, we'll go through the details of the projects that are being amended and closed out. I won't cover projects considered complete that are being dropped out of the RTIP here. So first up, we have the US 395 North Valleys, Golden Valley to Stead Phase 2 project, and that's being amended in order to merge 2 projects together, which means the scope and budget change to one and removal of the other. All scope elements and cost assumptions from the removed project are being folded into the US 395 larger project. Moving down, the G751 bridge replacement is a new project in the RTIP that will replace a bridge structure in Lockwood and rebuild roadway approaches. The I-80 East Widening project is being amended in line with the July amendment to the RTP. The construction phase of the project is being added, which now includes federal funding and significantly increases the project cost. The FRWA 51 Enhanced Safety Improvements project is being amended to increase the total cost and move the project back 1 year. The increase is a result of a recent price check and change to material used in the paving. And on this slide, the final one is the I-580 Bowers to Mount Rose Highway preservation project. And this one's being amended to increase the total project cost and move the project back 1 year. This increase is the result of an updated cost estimate and an extension to the project limits. So a couple more here, the I-80 Verdi Bridge Replacement Phase 1 project. This is a new project in the RTIP and will replace bridge structures at various locations through Verdi. And finally, the SR 667 Kitski Lane from South Virginia Street to Plum Lane and SR 653 Plum Lane from Kitski Lane to Terminal Way. This project is a new project in the RTIP and will include pavement preservation on both Kitski and Plum. So some quick final notes on this amendment process. The proposed amendment will require layers of approval from the RTC board, then it goes on to NDOT, then the FHWA and the FTA, the feds get final approval. The public comment period has been noticed through standard channels, including a Spanish language newspaper, and was opened on August 28th. The comment period closes on September 17th, and any comments received will be shared with the RTC board. This process also involves review by RTC's advisory committees and a public hearing, which will be at the September 20th board meeting. So thank you for your attention and happy to answer questions. Stepping in for Graham, filling in for him here.
I'll ask an easy one. Do you have a link handy for how people can submit public comment? I know it's still open.
Let me get that, search around for that and put it in the chat. And if I don't find it in time, I'll make sure to email it out to everybody.
Great, thank you. Michael?
Yeah, so I had a kind of quick but really nitty-gritty question. My day job involves budget reviews of the state charter schools, and we just finished our annual Are You Insane check. And looking at the I-80 East, to the widening to 3 lanes each direction, assuming I did my back of the napkin math correctly, it works out to about $8.25 million per mile. My understanding from admittedly 5 minutes of Google is that freeway lane miles typically range from 5 on the very low end to 25 on the high end. Given the relatively challenging terrain out there, is that a realistic budget, or is that is that going to be enough, or should the agency be planning on more than that, especially since we keep seeing the material and labor costs going up year over year?
Yeah, that is a great question. Like I said, this is not an RTC project, so we don't have a representative from NDOT to defend their numbers on the call today. But it is something that if you'd like to submit a public comment, we can also. I believe that the project team webpage is available on the NDOT website.
Thank you.
Hannah?
Thanks, Marquise. And thank you for the really clear way you explain everything. I think you're doing a great job, and I appreciate it. As a member of the CMAC, since part of the input process is to present here, I just want to convey to RTC and to NDOT via you that, as we discussed earlier, highway widening is a self-fulfilling prophecy that leads to more traffic, which in turn leads to more demand for lanes. Imagine if $100 million went to planning an alternative transit corridor instead of the $375,000 we just heard about. So I know that Marquise is not in charge of how the federal government decides to spend money. I know that RTC is not in charge. I know that even NDOT is not in charge. But I want this comment and overall dissatisfaction with our reliance on cars and highways conveyed, so that people who have a political role and have the opportunity for political conversations that do influence how money is spent can be aware that this is a concern among people who live here, and that we want to do more than drive cars and buy cars and expend carbon, whether it's from the gas in the engine or from the embodied carbon in the car. I mean, there's so much more we can do with $100 million. And of course, the freeway expansion is necessary right now. I understand it's important. There are safety issues on the highway. I'm not trying to say it's bad. And I know you all work very hard on these projects. NDOT works hard. None of this is to criticize people who are working within the system. But I would like it conveyed that when you come to the CMAC, I at least express a desire for a paradigm shift, and that I would like to see political leadership from our agencies on that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the comment. I will plug that we presented last month on the active transportation plan, and we're happily are looking for approval at the board meeting coming up in 2 weeks. So definitely excited about getting that process underway and increasing mode shift in how we can locally within Washoe County. And, hopefully we have that, we can connect into Tahoe Pyramid Trail and, have that induced demand that we were discussing earlier.
Yeah, and just to clarify one more time, Marquise, I know that you work very hard on that, and none of this is to say that you or any person is not doing enough.
It's not your fault, Marquise.
Marquise, I wanted to clarify in the packet that we got, this item is from Graham. And I just wanted to clarify, if people have questions, have follow-up things, do those go to Graham or do those go to you?
It would be best to direct those to Graham. I'm
Okay.
just stepping in for him for tonight.
No, perfect. Thank you. I'm glad you did. And then in the memos that come in the packets, if it is possible to include things like the link for public comment or even Graham's contact information, I think it'll just make it easier for anybody who's trying to follow up, have easy access to those in case they were not at this meeting and was not provided Graham's contact.
Yeah, I can make a note of that.
Thank you. I'm checking the participants and I don't see any raised hands and I don't see anything in the chat.
Oh.
So this is kind of your...
Anne is raising her hand.
I'm raising my hand.
Oh, you're raising your actual hand. I'm
Physically.
so sorry. That was
I'm
one
sorry.
thing I didn't check.
My button isn't working. I just want to make a comment to follow up what Panna said. Obviously, we all respect what the amount of work and diligence and expertise that goes into the work of RTC and NDOT, but I find it really interesting to be focused on this new energy economy and sustainability. And you build it and they will come. So all studies show that the more lanes you add to a highway, freeway, the more cars will occupy it, and not just individuals heading to Trick for work, but tourists heading in on 80 or out. I would have much rather seen millions of dollars go to a train, or much like the mines do in Elko, they require everyone to take a bus and park their cars at a location. So there is no individual car driving out to a mine. I just think there's so many alternatives to widening the highway to Trick to accommodate something none of us ever imagined 10 years ago, and that now has become a necessity for several companies based in Story County. Obviously, I'm here representing the chamber, but I will say that hundreds of millions of dollars could have, would have, should have gone into mass transit versus widening a highway, because the total aesthetic of the widening will also change our perception of the area and what it looks like to drive east or to come in to Reno Sparks. And, someone said it before, you build it and they will come. And I think even in a 20-year planning cycle, it's hard to imagine. I don't think any of us can imagine what this area will look like 20 years from now. We're talking about reaching 500,000 people in Washoe County over the next year and a half. So imagine the traffic and imagine the emissions. And at the same time, we're trying to talk about green energy and sustainability, we're just building more opportunities for cars. So Penna, I agree with you. There's nothing that I can do to stop it, but I don't think anybody at the state level or federal level is really bold enough to say, wait a minute, there's got to be a different way. I mean, I sat on a committee for a year studying how to reduce traffic and carbon emissions. And here we are with the same group that's talking about getting the money to build more lanes for more cars. So it's ironic or hypocritical or just strange to me. Thank you.
And I, if I may piggyback on that, because I know this is limited to Washoe County. That's what RTC Washoe is about. I guess I'm just making a comment about the greater view of this. There's lots of land out there to the east of Trick as well, and lots of places where new communities can be born that are not as car dependent, plenty of space for rail and other ways of getting to work from the east side, from the south side. And I'm just wondering, well, I guess my question for someone who, Marquise, I know that you're not involved with Lyon County or any of the other counties, but do you know if there's any consideration being put out there, especially with the massive amount of land that was bought by Blockchains LLC on Trick, that they were going to be building a city on until the pandemic and water rights disputes happened, to build alternatives from alternative directions. Yeah. I'm just wondering if anyone has any idea, we're to have a conversation about this. I'm just wondering, are there any plans to build out east and south of Trick rather than just depending completely on the community that already exists in Reno and Sparks? Probably not.
If I could just say, I mean, Sparks is working very hard to see more public land developed into housing, and Fernley is looking at the same thing. So we're going to get squished no matter what. There will be over 500,000 people living here. And while I'm not against growth, I'm for planned growth. And we're really talking about infrastructure here, which should be before all this growth. Unfortunately, it's reacting to the growth.
Yeah.
And they're reacting to the growth at Trick, which no one ever imagined when Tesla was first on the scene in 2014. So for decades from now, it'll be a really interesting lesson in advanced planning. And for all the consultants we've hired, nobody imagined this area would become 500,000 people when the road structures and infrastructure basically were built for a maximum of about 250,000. So we're all feeling the effects of traffic, whether it's heading out on I-80 or it's just driving around town. And it's just something that wasn't anticipated 10 years ago. And now state, federal, county, city agencies are having to react. And if it were not for COVID and the money we got, I don't know what we'd be doing to respond to the growth here.
Just seems to me like it would be easier to build new communities where there currently are none, or very sparse rural communities, rather than redeveloping existing communities. I know that kind of goes against the whole idea of, building up Washoe County. It just seems like it might be, everyone talks about wanting to start with a clean slate. I even heard Naomi Dora talk about that. This isn't a clean slate. We're going to have to work with what we already built. Well, I mean, we have a clean slate in other places. Let's build that rail and alternative transportation community somewhere where nothing has been built yet, and do it right this time. Unfortunately, it's in a different county. That seems to be the only thing standing in the way of, it depends on what Story County does and what Lyon County does. But they have plenty of space. I don't know about the water.
Well, I'm still waiting for the childcare center that Tesla said it was going to build on the property.
Yeah.
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I have nothing against these big corporations. They're partners of the chamber. We are thrilled they employ so many people. I'll just say that being a resident here for a long time, it's interesting to see how ass backwards I guess we approach things. I mean, I have so much respect for RTC and NDOT. They can only do what has landed on their plate. But elected officials have to do more than just say, for every action, there's a reaction. We should start planning for 1 million people. And what does mass transportation look like? I mean, in Las Vegas, they looked at mass transportation to Los Angeles. Here, we're just talking about getting to Fernley. So I just think boldness and a little bit of courage and speaking to our elected officials, and that's probably not the role of this multimodal transportation committee, but I think we always engage in interesting conversations based on the presentations we've heard, which stimulate us to think, gee, if I had a pencil, how would I draw this? Or what would I do if I was an elected official and wanted federal dollars to support a better transit system, reduce carbon emissions, deal with clean energy? It would probably not be, let's add more cars to more freeway space.
Seems like duct tape.
I've got to get off, but thank you for listening to my rant. I'm sorry to engage in it.
No, I love hearing it. Thank you, Anne.
Yep,
Thank you. I'm
Anne.
sorry. I have to go to another Zoom. I apologize.
Bye-bye.
I want to read one of these comments in the chat. Marquise, would you be able to confirm that the RTC staff can convey these kinds of comments to the board?
Yeah, thanks, Panoa, and thanks, Suting, for reading it. Yeah, this is exactly the kind of conversation we want from this group. So it's always very engaging, and the way that we're working on, or the way that we're conveying these things, these conversations to the board, is through a line item at the bottom of staff reports. So the idea would be that we're going to summarize what we hear. We were recording the meeting, we have the transcriptions, and we're going to condense the conversation into a few lines that will appear on the staff report for each project. Vanessa, is that accurate? What do you say?
Yes, that's accurate. And I think that's probably the best way for us to transmit this information to the board because it's specifically tied to the project instead of it being in, some other page of the board packet. This directly connects to the project. So we feel like this is the most efficient and effective way to get your comments on certain topics in front of the board members.
Is there any way to CC the CMAC committee when it gets submitted to part of the RTC board meeting documents? I don't think that there's enough time to modify, but I think just for us to be able to see it in case there was something we wanted to point out or add on to as public comment, that we could see it.
So I guess two things. It's the summary from today's meeting, which will be in the board packet attached to that project item. And then there's also the minutes from this meeting, which are public record. And the minutes will also be available. That's going to be a longer, just the longer description of the meeting. And this committee has, just as we approved earlier this evening, that's when we'll bring that back to you for review. The summary is meant, again, to accompany the project item so that we get the full picture of the project for the board. And there's also not enough time really between, it's a bit of a timing issue between this meeting and our board meeting item submission deadline, which is next Friday. The minutes take a little while to prepare. Plus, this committee has to approve the minutes before they are officially published. So the summary is our workaround to make sure that the board gets the information that this committee is, the feedback this committee is providing in the most timely manner. And then the longer version will be available at a later date once the meeting minutes are approved by this committee.
Okay. So I think for CMAC members, it's just knowing what this timeline is. And especially you were able to provide when this presentation, the feedback from this presentation will be on the September 20th meeting. I think it's just that we have to kind of put it in our own calendars to check for that agenda packet before that meeting happens, to prepare to provide public comment if there's anything that we wanted to add.
Sure, absolutely. And there's public comment available at every board meeting. So if there's something in particular that, members of this committee wish to speak on, certainly that's available. But we will be also providing the comments provided during this meeting to the board.
Great, thank you. And when can we expect to see that agenda packet on the website? Like just
let's see. Let's see, we're required to submit it 2 weeks before. Lolita, do you know the date when it's published? I believe it's about a week before the meeting. We can get you that date. I'm still new. I'm still learning all the dates.
I'm just trying to figure out when to put in my calendar. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Jim Gee from the Director of PT. It's typically published the Friday before the board meeting, so 1 week ahead of time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
May I just briefly test my audio? Does it sound better? I didn't realize there was an issue. Okay, thanks.
I think there's one more hand in the chat. You can go ahead, or not in the chat, with the hand raised virtually, and then I'll check the images.
Thanks, Sutang. It's Pana. Thanks, Vanessa. I just, this is where I volunteer my time, and of course I can follow up more with the packets that go to the board and potentially submit additional public comments. But really my question is, would you be able to convey the sentiment of the meeting, of these comments, a desire to see more systemic change, and like Anne was saying, the courage to advocate for a different approach, for a transit first approach, imagining what $100 million could do other than expand the highway, understanding again that it may feel futile to share that, but being able to convey transparently that this is the information you got, because this is where I come to volunteer and to share my input.
This is Vanessa. So thank you for that follow-up. And absolutely, we, as Marquise mentioned, we value this group greatly, and this is really a excellent source for our board to understand what our community really wants and needs. And so we hope to give you many meaningful opportunities to provide feedback and to carry that feedback back to the board. For this widening, the I-80 widening, this is an NDOT project, so we really have no control there. If NDOT wants to do this, it's in their purview to do that. It is not an RTC project. So on this one in particular, we have a lot less say-so and control than we would on one of our own projects. And so I think if it's that project in particular that you really want to make sure that your voice is heard on, going to the NDOT public comment would probably be the most effective, because while our board can also hear your sort of general, thoughts on active transportation and lane widening for this project in particular, our board has no authority over that project.
This is Damien. Quick question that gives me a really good question.
We've got hands up. I think we're gonna go Michael and then
I'm sorry.
David.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a quick comment for since I remember seeing it, since I'm one of those nerds that actually reads the report section of the board packet every month. There is a recurring item called the advisory committee report that I've somewhat regularly seen commentary from what's been discussed in these meetings. So it is getting presented to the board. We don't have to not that we don't trust Vanessa and Marquis, but to it's not just it is something that goes out on those board packets. I believe it's normally item 4.2.3 if for you, if you're so inclined to go in and read it every month. Like I said, I'm one of those nerds who actually reads the entire report section before every board meeting, so I actually kind of remembered seeing that.
Great point. Thanks for highlighting that. That is a second way. So we have the project specific comments along with the overall TAC and CMAC report. So yeah, thank you again for acknowledging or pointing that out.
Damien, go ahead. Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, thanks. My quick question was, I didn't know NDOT had board meetings or public comment. How do we engage with that? And anyone have any information on that? If not, I could probably find it. The internet's out there. I'm just curious. It's the first time I ever heard about public comment for NDOT. I thought they were more like this untouchable organization. Yeah. Okay. I'll do some research. I was just curious about it. Thanks.
Okay, I think that's everybody. Speak now or wait for public comment, which is next. Thank you, Marquise, for presenting on Graham's behalf. We are on number 6, RTC staff announcements.
Yeah, I guess I can jump in one more time. We had a great conversation, I think, last week with Suting and Ryan, your chair and vice chair, regarding accessibility and just doing our best to ensure that we're committed to making these meetings run as accessibly as possible. To that end, we're ironing out the details, and I think we'll be ready to go in full force for the next meeting. We did send out the Tahoe Pyramid Trail presentation beforehand, and that's something that we're committing to do going forward for visual aids during presentations and other displays. Also, I'll do a more formal presentation or a more in-depth presentation at the next meeting, but we'd also like to start having folks announce their names before they speak, before asking a question and before adding on to a question. RTC staff will be held to the same standards, of course, just so that we have, for people on the phone, we just want this to be as accessible of a meeting as possible. So more to come on that. But yeah, we're working on it.
Thank you. Are there any other RTC staff announcements at this time? Great. Number 7, public comment.
Hello, my name's Juan Martinez for the record. I have a question for Mr. McGee. Is it true the new bidding is the general public is gonna ride with ADA paratransit? And go ahead. And my second question is, since all us CMAC board members are volunteering our time, if we can bring back the free rides for ADA for members.
So I just want to I'm going to read what it says for public comment. It says that you can make public comment pertaining to matters both on and off the agenda. Comments are to be made to the committee as a whole and not to individual committee members or staff. Committee members may provide public comment, and public comment is limited to the 3 minutes. So I think the comment can stand. And then, however, anybody would like to follow up on that public comment, Marquise and Vanessa, please correct me if I'm wrong, right? People can follow up individually or after the meeting, but for right now, we're just taking public comment. We're not responding or answering questions.
This is Juan Martinez again for the record. I was trying to find the unmute button and I had trouble. This is just a question.
Okay. So, okay.
I need accommodation because I'm low vision and I was sent things that are not accessible for me.
No, I hear you. I'm just trying to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do.
So for the record, Jim Gee, Director of Public Transit. I don't want to violate our public comment rules. So what I can do is I did receive a copy of your comment earlier that you had sent in today by email. I'll do a formal response to that, and I'll CC the CMAC group through Marquise so that we're transparent and everyone can understand the question and also see the response.
Thank you. Damien?
Yeah, just real quick. This is Damien. I wanted to bring up that I believe it's going to be the next Reno City Council meeting is when Dig Studio will finally be able to have the opportunity to present their report on the Truckee River Vision Plan. They were going to do it on this last, but they didn't have time because there was so much on the agenda that went until like 9 o'clock at night. So I just wanted to make the comment that the people from Dig Studio, I have wonderful feelings from them. Brandon, the guy that is in charge of it, he's the founder. Man, I have never encountered a consultation firm that is so open to conversations and just listening to people and soaking in everyone's information from the entire community. He has really built a good, solid foundation for getting the river corridor back on track. I mean, I've said it millions of times. River corridors started 50 years ago to the current state that it's at. And with all of the turnover and all of the change of the guard and so much time that's been spent building that plan, so many people in the city council and other jurisdictions and agencies have kind of lost track of it. And this is, from what I've seen, that the entire culmination of what's been put together so quickly by this Dig Studio consultation firm is top notch. And so you can still see the draft on the Truckee River Vision Plan website, which is linked from Reno. I don't have a link directly, but the draft was from April and the new version of it has been finished and was going to be shown. But yeah, just, it's not public yet, but yeah, just take a look at what was out there and lots of good stuff in that thing. Just wanted to bring it up. I have really good feelings for the entire project that's going on.
Thank you for your comment. I am checking all of the places to see if there are any further comments or hands. Okay, seeing none, thank you everybody for your time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second. Kelly Award for the record.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 All not in favor, say nay. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. We will see you all next month. Have a wonderful month, unless we see you at a meeting in between. Take care.
Everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Marquesis? Oh, there you are. Marquesis? Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hi. My name's Paul Hewen, and I just found out that my classes have